So I would like to introduce Nicola Langford, Sales Director International for Technology from Sage.
Thanks, Isabel. Hi, everybody. Good morning or good afternoon, depending on where you're joining us from today. As Isabel said, I'm Nicola Langford, and I'm the Sales Director for Technology from Sage, covering the international markets, which for us is everywhere outside of North America, so quite a big remit. I'm absolutely delighted to be here today at my first Talis Insight Asia Pacific to talk to you about Technology from Sage. Now, Technology from Sage is the name for a very, very new coming together of a number of the Sage businesses and their associated products. I'm sure some of you will be familiar with the term Technology from Sage, as we have been talking about it for the last few months. But if you're not, you'll definitely be familiar with some of the products that now fall under this banner. As our Talis community, you'll be hearing a lot more about Technology from Sage over the coming months and years. And so we thought it would be a good idea today, as you've all taken the time to join us, so that's great, thank you. We thought it'd be a good idea to give you an introduction to Technology from Sage, or TFS, as we fondly call it, and takes less typing and talking, to tell you who we are, explain what we're all about, look at our mission, our values, our focus, the strategic direction, and our aspirations, immediate and in the future. So if we can, I think we can probably jump very quickly through slides 2 and 3, because Isabel had very kindly already updated you on the little bit of housekeeping, but I do hope you can all hear me okay, and do put anything in the chat if you can't hear me properly. I also just wanted to say that before we jump in, there's just a couple of things. Oh no, sorry. There's plenty of time for questions and feedback at the end of the session. And so please do add your questions and any thoughts that you might have or feedback that you'd like to share on what I'm telling you today. If you add them in the chat as we go through, then we can address them at the end of the session. And I have left quite a bit of time just to give everyone the opportunity to share their thoughts. And so what is and who are Technology from Sage? So Technology from Sage is the bringing together of 3 companies. Could we perhaps just go back one slide, Laura? Sorry, thank you, sorry. So Technology from Sage is the bringing together of 3 Sage companies, but we're now under one banner. So Talis, Lean Library and Cywheel are the 3 companies that form Technology from Sage. I'm sure you're aware that Talis and Lean Library have both been in the Sage family for quite a while, operating quite independently as individual units, but with the backing and support of Sage Publishing. Cywheel, you might not be quite as familiar with Cywheel. Cywheel's a referencing and authoring tool. It was acquired to become part of Technology from Sage specifically in the middle of 2022. And so we've been busy integrating the Cywheel family and the Cywheel product into our band of companies. And I am going to tell you a bit more about the products later on in this session. But with the conception of TFS, we've brought these 3 businesses together. We've aligned the teams so that the teams work across the different businesses. I think it is important to stress there, of course, that there are certain teams and members of teams that still have very specific business or product focus. Because obviously that's required and we need that to ensure continuity in the products and to have that expertise that you all expect us to have. But we have all come together as one, and so particularly from a sales and marketing point of view and an operations and support point of view, we really are working across all of the different products and businesses now. The reason that we've come together is that these businesses all offer digital services that serve the library community and improve the workflow of your patrons, researchers and academics, whether used individually or in combination. these services enable interaction with content and ensure the coming together ensure the users are making the most of the resources and library services that are available to them. So this coming together actually enables the products to be used on their own, but also gives us what we feel is a really exciting opportunity to look at cross-product integrations, to see how the different products that form technology from Sage can actually talk to each other, interact with each other, and really sort of bring everything together so that we continue to support you as a library community and our end users. And we've already started to work on some of these integrations, and I'll give you I'm not going to give you a big sneaky peek, but I will give you some examples of our integration plans later. And so ultimately, if we can just move on to that next slide, Laura, thank you. So ultimately, what we want to do is serve you and your patrons by making learning and research easier. That's our goal, and that's our main purpose. Next one, please. And so our mission at Technology from Sage is to help redefine and amplify the power of the academic library to enhance teaching, learning, and research. So as already mentioned, we are owned by Sage Publishing. And if you're an existing customer of Sage, then you may well be very familiar with their mission. It's a mission that I love. It's building bridges to knowledge. It really has its roots in our founder Sarah's ideals of connecting different disciplines together. So always trying to make sure that research has the best public impact it can, and that those practitioners, regardless of the field that they're in, are actually able to access and see that research and benefit from that research. So our mission at TFS is driven by that, kind of inspired by that, and flows down from Sage's main mission. So we also want to build bridges to knowledge, focusing on those three key pillars of teaching, learning, and research. But we position the library at the heart of that. So that's where our mission differs slightly from Sage. We're building those bridges to knowledge, but actually we're putting the library at the heart of what we do. So you as librarians and your libraries, you're our North Star. Well, I guess you're our North Star if you're in the Northern Hemisphere, the Southern Polar Star if you're in the Southern Hemisphere, which of course is where we are today. And so that really does mean that we want to put the library at the heart of what we do. And that's really important to us because it means that all of our products, our strategic direction, the communications that we put out, the marketing that we do, the way that we engage with our community, we're always going to put the library at the centre. We're very focused on the end user too, and we're trying to work out the best way of improving the aspects of teaching, learning and research. But we're always doing it, whether we're looking at how to improve the experience for your end users, whether they are students, researchers or academics, or whether it's trying to help you and support you. We're always looking at it through the lens of the library. And really trying to identify what the library's role is in the areas of teaching, learning and research. So constantly talking and listening to you to see what you need and where you want the library to add value to those key pillars of learning, teaching and research. And also, I think that really shows our emphasis on that and why our mission statement includes the word amplify. But we're also acutely aware, and I know we're going to talk about it in sessions later today, that the library has gone through and continues actually to go through many changes, some brought on, of course, by COVID, many brought on by COVID, but others had started before that, and that there's also been significant shifts in library patron behaviour. And so what we hope to do with technology from Sage is to make a contribution to the redefining of the library's role from the perspective of our businesses. We've already seen and responded to some of the changes that we can see happening. We're always trying to adapt the products that we already have to make sure that they really are serving the needs and making sure that they are supporting you and your communities. And we know that actually the changes haven't finished. We envisage a lot more to come over the next decade, and we know that you guys too, from all the from all the discussions that we've had with you. And so we want to be there to support you, our community, as these shifts continue. And so if we could just move on to the next slide, please, Laura. Thank you. So I think our positioning statement really summarises and pulls together the reasoning behind technology from Sage. I appreciate that this repeats a little of what I've already said, but I really do think it highlights who and what we are and why we've brought together the different businesses. So the positioning statement is that the right technology can remove barriers to knowledge. So we've created a portfolio of digital services that improve your patrons' workflow, from managing their reading list to discovering online resources and reference management. Whether used individually or in combination, they help amplify the library's value on campus, prepare your library for the future, and are of course backed by a name that you already trust in Sage. And then I just very quickly wanted to touch on our values and what we believe and what will guide us as we move forward on the TFS journey. So if we could just move on, thank you. So here you can see we've identified what we feel are 4 core values. That first one, of course, we've already discussed. The right technology can remove barriers to knowledge. And so we are, through the products we have and through the developments and integrations we're planning to make, we really are hoping that we can assist you guys by developing the right technology, listening to you, doing what you need us to do, and to really remove those barriers to knowledge so that everyone can access the resources and materials and services that they require. We also have included independence sustains entrepreneurial verve. Now, of course, for those of you who know the history of Talis and the history of Lean Library and the history of Cyril, we all were quite small independent companies that have then come into the Sage fold, but we have always had that kind of independence from Sage because we're like the emerging technologies division, and so we are able to move at pace. One of the key things we want to do as part of our TFS strategy is to move from ideation to delivery very rapidly. We want to not overthink and just move so that we keep that entrepreneurial verve that's required in the digital world and are able to, you know, really move forward and deliver what's required. And then, of course, as I'm sure I've dropped it in quite a lot already, but librarians are, of course, completely fundamental to learning and research on campus. It wouldn't be able to take place without the library and librarians, and that is why you are our North or Southern Star, and also why we are keeping the libraries at the heart of everything we do. So when we think about developments and we will be talking to you guys about developments, we'll always be making sure that we are keeping your needs and what you think is needed at the heart of what we do. And finally, great relationships are the bedrock of great work. So we actually pride ourselves on our relationships with our community, and we want to continue to build those relationships and make sure that we're responding and delivering as you expect and as you require. And so that, again, is something we'll be giving a lot of focus to. And then ultimately, we can just move on, Laura, thanks. What we are really aiming to deliver are pioneering digital services that actually give you the freedom to choose. So there will be, you know, you can choose which bits of the workflow you want to address. There's different products that address different parts of the workflow. But also you know that we will have the support and backing of SAGE. So although we'll be able to innovate quickly and move forward quickly, giving you the choice of what you might need to support you, we will always have that backing of SAGE. And of course, as I'm sure you know from SAGE history, SAGE has recently been put into trust. So we'll always remain independent and always be able to have that entrepreneurial verve. Now to the products that make up TFS. So here you can see the product portfolio and how the different products interact with content. So whether that's enabling your users to engage with the content or discover relevant content or access the content. So I know you're all very familiar with Talis Aspire and also Talis Elevate. We also have, there's 3 products from Lean Library. So there's Lean Library Access, but then we also have Lean Library Futures, which incorporates the 3rd product, Workflow for LibGuides. And we also have, as mentioned before, Cyril, which is a new reading and authoring tool. And I want to just introduce you to the products by giving you a quick overview of them, because I know that not everybody will be familiar with all of them. So I thought the best way to show you the products is to actually map them onto the student workflow. So if we next slide, please. So this is our view of the student workflow. And when we get to questions and feedback, I really would like to know if you think we've missed any key areas in this workflow. But if we start at the top right with the guided discovery element, so here you can think of this as the starting point where reading lists could come in, but also the learning management system and the modular approaches to teaching. There's then, of course, the engagement with resources beginning independently. I've just seen Nick's question pop up. I will address that when we get through to the question section. Thanks, Nick. And so, sorry, whereas on the guided engagement with the resources, so that can begin independently with the student in terms of their reading, and then move to a more guided engagement with the resources where it's not just independent reading, but where, for example, academics are asking the student to comment in a peer setting or to make assertions and to debate those assertions in a group. Then, of course, we have instruction, and that is in terms of lectures and seminars and other means of instruction. And then we have independent discovery, where the student may embark on independent research that may form the backbone of their thesis or an essay. And then, of course, the writing, and where they're authoring their work as well. And some of these elements, of course, aren't just specific to students, but also to other members of the academic community, so researchers and academics, faculty, and those roles, of course, also engage at different points with the points of this student workflow. But if you overlay our products onto this, first we have Talis Aspire. Click, please, Laura. Thank you. Now, of course, you're all very familiar with this, so I don't really need to give you an overview, but it is, of course, our reading list solution. It helps faculty and academics engage with undergraduates by setting the required reading and identifying relevant resources. But Aspire also has that connection back to the library to ensure compliance and enable procurement, and to ensure that all the key stakeholders around resource provision, so that being the library, academics, students, are all working closely together. So it's kind of the glue that brings everyone together around the resources that are required for the courses, which you all know. Then we have Talis Elevate. Again, I know a number of you will be familiar with this product too, but for those who aren't, Elevate is our collaborative social annotation tool, almost like a player. It wraps around content, and then it supports and enables students to comment directly on resources with both their peers and academics. It also gives academics really clear insights on the use of those resources, shows how students engaging with the resources, how much time they spend on them, also shows how the group as a whole is engaging, if it's a class group who are commenting. So really gives insights on usage and in terms of how that can feed in and help the library. It of course helps to inform collection development, to share decisions and prioritization for procurement. So that's how that fits in. And then we have Lean Library. So Lean Library is a browser extension that it essentially needs to be downloaded by individual students. It can be mass deployed onto institutional devices, but then it basically sits on their desktop and helps to streamline access to libraries' resources when students or researchers or academics are starting their research off campus or searching outside the library's discovery service. So, for example, we all know that Google Scholar is very much the search engine of choice and is where a lot of students start their journey. There are lots of other open discovery tools as well, but Lean Library helps to bring the students from there back to library content. It also brings other relevant library services and tools into the user's workflow at the point of need. So it could be relevant content recommendations, it could be relevant library guides or training materials that are surfaced at the right point so that users can access them immediately. Essentially, it can be anything that might be relevant while the user is searching and discovering online. And then finally, we have Cywheel, last but not least. Cywheel is an advanced reference management and authoring tool and comes in the form of a browser extension, but also has Google Docs and Word plugins as well as an app. And that helps the patron, whether their patron is a researcher or a student, with their whole authoring workflow around referencing, annotations, managing their reading, and much more. And so that's a brief overview of the products that make up the technology from Sage portfolio. And as we look into the future, one of the things that we're particularly focused on across technology from Sage is the way in which we can bring all of these products together. And our aim over the coming years, can we press the next button, Laura? Thank you. And again, thank you. So our aim over the coming years is to connect these tools, to help share insights and features across the student workflow. I'm using the student workflow as an example here because it's the most simple workflow, I guess. But some of these products and the planned integrations also, of course, relate to researchers and academics. And what we mean when I'm talking about the insights is that we believe there are insights across each of these products where our library partners may subscribe to one or more of these products. It can actually be beneficial if they triangulate, and so we can pull information out so you can really have the insights into how those products are being used and to what that tells you about the resources that are being used or the services that are being delivered. So, for example, we have a huge amount of information about the resources that the library users commonly reference in the library. We have information about the resources that the users are regularly accessing and discovering. We can see that they encounter paywalls and other obstacles. And we can also see where there's examples of academics setting particular resources and the resources are important to them. And so then if we just take all of those points and look at the area of resource provision, then we think if we can connect those, we should be able to give you some really interesting analytics and data on what specific resources are getting the most use and the most engagement across the different touch points from the different products. And some of those may be ones that are being heavily invested in, but may not. And so actually this sort of data can help guide procurement, of course, as you'll be aware. And so that's just one example of how we think it could be really valuable and powerful to share the sort of data in a way that is useful and relevant. And of course, we also think there's a lot of features that we believe can be integrated across the products, and that those integrations could also deliver quite powerful results. If we could just move to the next slide, Laura. And so ultimately, over the coming years, what we want to be able to show and what we want to be able to do for you, the library community, is show you the power of the disambiguated user. So to be able to show you a profile that looks at key themes of engagement, provisioning and compliance. Now, it will take us some time to get there, but we'll be able to make incremental steps quite quickly by making improvements to some of our existing products, and then also bringing some of the products together. But when we've been talking and doing a listening exercise to see what people really want, those three themes have come up quite often and are quite common concerns. And so being able to provide data that supports those themes, we think is a good direction to move in. And then we have, of course, I mentioned earlier, got some integration plans, so cross-product integrations. And I don't want to steal Scott's thunder, because Scott is talking to you tomorrow about Aspire product development and the roadmap. And so I don't want to say too much about it, but we can now, we have already done one integration with Aspire and Lean Library, and Lean Library has its own database of open access resources, and we can now surface open access resources from Lean Library in Aspire when people are searching for materials. So that's one thing that we've already done, and I'm sure Scott will talk to you about that much more tomorrow. And then just a further example is if we look at Cywheel and Lean Library, these two products occupy a significant portion of the patron's workflow, from discovering the content that they need through to research and then to referencing. And so we're looking at integrating between those to make them really joined up, almost a single productivity tool for the end user. And then equally with Talis Elevate, social annotation tool, at the moment it's its own player, and we need to integrate individually with content partners to bring content in the player, or we ask libraries or academics to upload content following the appropriate guidelines, of course, and then that content's embedded in the player. But we could actually take that player into the Lean Library browser extension and then use the annotation tool anywhere online without the need for all the current integrations. So that's just some examples of a small number of things that we're working on and the direction we're taking. Over the last 6 months, we have conducted an extensive listening exercise with customers because TFS is very new. And we are determined to ensure that our direction of travel reflects the needs of the library market that we are, of course, very proud to serve. We talked to the community about the individual products, but also looked at the overall approach across TFS. And this has given us a real insight into what is important to our community, the challenges that you're all facing, and also gave us a real idea of the direction and the initial focus. And so our two key areas for, as well as the things I've already mentioned, and also looking at individual product improvements, is actually looking at cross-product integrations with the open access, as I've already mentioned, but also we're planning to bring open educational resources into that search as well. And we're also looking at DEI and accessibility. And you'll hear a lot more about these as you have the product session tomorrow. And so I just want to say thanks very much for your time. I hope that's given you a good introduction to technology from Sage. I hope you're as excited as we are about the opportunities that we think will open up as a result of all of these products sitting together. There's lots of opportunities for integration and for us to serve you better. So I am happy to take any questions. Thanks for listening. I noticed there was a question about ChatGPT not being in from Nick, about not being in the workflow. It is quite funny because we've been having quite a lot of conversations about ChatGPT, and that will be added to that workflow diagram very soon.